Okay.
That's good.
Hello,
I remember to
everyone.
record.
Huh? I know. I've
That's a
set it up
win.
automatically. I love automation. We talk about that a lot here.
Yeah.
So everyone's pouring in from the waiting room. So I want to welcome all of you to the May 2025 NJBIA Business Growth Roundtable. So what did I say? It was our 48th episode,
46. Oh, I think
46th
46.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, 46 episodes on a monthly show. That's pretty amazing. And we have a large crowd today. So you're all piling in, and I'm going to get started. So again, thank you for joining us. Rachel and I are thrilled to have done this collaboration with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. And for those of you who are new to the NJBIA, they are the largest statewide business association representing about a quarter of all New Jersey employees. Pretty impressive. They offer, we are a member of NJBIA, and they offer customer development opportunities, visibility through events, magazine ads, or their podcast or TV show, or you can certainly participate in sponsoring this event as well. They offer money-saving discounts on stuff your business is probably already using, such as payroll, healthcare training, a 401k solution, and 24/7 HR support. So I will drop Anthony Arena info into the chat in just a moment because I'm not that good of a multitasker. If you have any questions about NJBIA, please feel free to reach out to Anthony Arena and he will help you. I know Rachel and I can also certainly give you some testimonial information on membership and how it's benefited us. And before we move on, I just want you to visit their website to see they have some really great events coming up. May 14th, that's tomorrow. It's an in-person event. The second act of Cannabis in the Garden State, hot topic. May 20th, they continue with their leadership series, Leadership in Times of Change and Crisis. And then on May 22nd, also in person, 2025 State of the State Manufacturing. So they've got their finger on the pulse of all things business in New Jersey. So we encourage you to check that out. And by the way, I am Donna Miller. I can't find my intro, so I'm going to wing it.
You're doing a great job.
I am president and founder. Oh, no, I'm chief visionary officer. See, I already messed it up. I'm chief visionary officer and founder at C3 Works, WORX. That's a new brand. Check it out.
Ooh.
And Donna Miller Business Growth Consulting, where we are entering our fourth decade of helping companies to accelerate their growth. And we do that by building systems around finance operations and biz dev. Our clients come to us because they know that we're going to build systems that are efficient, executable, and connected. They can execute on them or we can help execute on them. And really at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're helping companies and teams and business owners to create the foundation for building a business that will scale and at a minimum run without them involved in every little detail of the business. So that is me. Again, I am Donna Miller. So let me hand it to Rachel Durkin, who's going to tell you about some of the fabulous people who help us pull this event off every month.
Let me just say this is not going well. I just got a new puppy and he keeps chewing on my hand and I'm trying desperately to hold it
Yeah,
together. But we're just gonna keep going. All
it's a
right.
Zoom moment.
Yeah. All right, everyone, here we go. My name is Rachel Durkin. I'm with Paradigm Marketing and Design. We are a web branding, marketing, and sales enablement agency that specializes in working with clients with a complex sale. So if you have a sales team and you need help closing a deal, closing more deals, we can build a marketing to sales infrastructure to make that happen and have them allow your sales team to have more qualified leads and close deals more quickly. And I want this event would not be what it is. We would not be in our 46th event, 5 years in, crushing it.
Just saying.
Yeah, just saying. And Donna wouldn't be winging it, and I wouldn't have been able to say that while something's gnawing on my hand because of the repetition without our sponsors and our partners in this. So first, I want to thank Atlas Consulting Services, a full-service insurance brokerage firm with specialized expertise in sophisticated and multifaceted employee benefit programs, including health, dental, vision, life, disability, retirement, and more. They are a trusted partner for many of the region's most prestigious companies, law firms, and hedge funds, as well as small to large businesses. Atlas handles all aspects of employer sponsorship benefits, from plan implementation to employee communication and termination and COBRA administration to claims resolution to regulatory monitoring to state and federal compliance laws. Atlas negotiates and executes employee benefit plans that are tailored to achieve the most targeted, comprehensive, and cost-effective solutions for most organizations. We also want to thank Summit Place Financial Advisors, who offers focused, individualized attention, serving a select group of highly successful people like you who have outgrown mass market institution. Success only brings complex investments, tax, and estate planning challenges. Summit Place offers experienced, personalized, and disciplined guidance to help achieve your financial goals and help simplify your wealth opportunistically. They collaborate with other trusted professionals in your circle to provide a holistic, expert approach to your financial journey. And of course, they are SEC registered firm. They do not sell products, earn commission, or have quotas to meet. They are solely out there for your best interest. As somebody who has referred many of folks to them, I can tell you they truly are really good at what they do. And with that, I just want to quickly talk about next, I don't know if you're supposed to talk about it or I am, Donna, but next month's event where Donna and I are going to talk, and our teams are going to have a panel discussion on how to build efficiency in your business, efficiency in marketing, efficiency in operations, efficiency in finance that empowers you to be more effective, leverage AI, and make more money overall.
Woohoo!
So with that, I'm going to pass back to Donna to introduce our speaker.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. And what is your dog's name?
Brody.
Brody. Rachel and Brody. So before I bring our fabulous speaker to the stage, let me just talk about a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this, so you don't have to necessarily take copious notes. We are recording it. We have a big group today. Woohoo. So I want to encourage you. This is, you are now in a Zoom room with over 100 people who are interested in the same thing that you're interested in. So use that chat window to introduce yourself and to try to do some networking. So I want to encourage that. But we will allow for a nice, robust Q&A because we know this is a hot topic at the end. That said, please do not put your questions in the chat. It's unwieldy. Please use the Q&A for your chat. And Kelly already dropped the link for next month. So that's everything I have. So without any further delay, let me bring my colleague and friend to the stage, Amanda Pupo. So here's Amanda's intro, which I love. Having a penchant for cold calling. Who has that, I ask you? Amanda started Market Reach from her apartment in Central Jersey 24 years ago. Amanda, come on stage. That's when I think I met her. Here she is to help business owners and salespeople in the B2B space that didn't like cold calling. Can you relate? Or felt like they were ineffective. Can you relate? She has a team of appointment setters that set high-level sales appointments every day using internet research for qualifying, phone and email to engage with decision makers, and then convert to a sales meeting for the client. You can find lots more information on Amanda at marketreachresults.com. So I do have to say, before Amanda gets started, first of all, unmute yourself. But Amanda and I did meet. I think we did meet 24 years ago.
I think it was about that time.
We were each about 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We were the youngest business owners in the room.
That's right.
But we met through networking. And I do believe it was the New Jersey Association of Women Business Owners where I met a lot of really great people. And I was always so impressed with Amanda's energy and commitment and how much she knew about her subject and how passionate she is about cold calling. And someone who's worked with small businesses for these 30 years and teaching the Earn More program, I always say there's, 4 things we need to do. We have network, we have to be a thought leader, we have to deliver content, and we have to dial for dollars. When you're in the B2B world, that's what converts business. So Amanda, I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to leave it to you. And then, like I said, everyone, I know you're going to have questions. Please put them in the Q&A section of the Zoom, and we will allow time for that. And if we have too many questions, which is also a possibility, we'll make sure we get you taken care of. So Amanda, I'm going dark. Take it away.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks for having me today, everybody. I'm excited to sort of share my thoughts and share some ideas, some that you already know and some that will just be a reminder. So that is really the goal for today. So first off, before I begin, can you guys
swap your screens? Yeah, there you go. Now you got the right screen. Good.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, good. So we're going to get started right away because we only have 30 minutes. And then we'll leave time for some Q&A as well. So again, my name is Amanda Puppo, and I started this company 24 years ago. We do three things here. We do qualifying on prospect lists, we set sales meetings, and we also engage more LinkedIn connections. So we don't do content, but we do increase connections. So today we're going to talk about how we go about that work, especially what it means to qualify your best targets. The concept around phone prospecting that works, and then how to use multi-channel marketing. So let's get right into it. We're going to cover metrics, delve into list strategy, what's a needs analysis, and then connect the dots to make it easy for the prospect to say yes to the appointment. And we will tie all that into the multi-channel towards active or proactive prospecting. And I define proactive, the opposite of reactive, right? So reactive prospecting or demand generation is really important as well. To be able to get inbound leads is really important. But what we're doing here is we're going to go directly to where our prospects live and work and exist and smoke them out. And I know that sounds weird, but that's what we're going to do here. So let's first talk about metrics. So sometimes this gets a little bit overlooked in terms of what are we measuring? And what do the law of large numbers tell us? So let's keep it simple, right? This is an age-old technique. And people have asked me that. They've said, well, Amanda, does cold calling still work? The first thing I will address is that warm calling is always better than cold calling. Now, that's a big box to unwrap, the concept of warm versus cold, but I'll say it simply this way. When you can have reliable data, or when you can use a warm introduction, it becomes a warm call. So that's it in a nutshell. If we can at least do one of those two or both of those things, where we have a list that we feel is reliable data, and or we have an introduction that is warmer than cold, then that's a warm call, and that will always lead you to better results. But we don't always have that luxury. And when we don't have that luxury, we got to start somewhere. So that is how it works the best, is when you can use a list that you build to be accurate data, and then use multi-channel marketing, including the phone, to get access to the decision maker. With that said, let's spin right back to the law of large numbers and what that tells us. What it says is that the more dials you make that are properly executed. Sometimes in the 80s, they used to say the more dials you make, the more leads you'll get. Not today. Today, you've got to make calls the right way. And the right way is not, hi, my name's Amanda. Here's why I'm calling. Can I get 15 minutes from you next week? People's most precious commodity is time. So what are you doing in that call to make it worth their time? But the more decision makers that you speak to, the more meetings you set, the more quotes, the more closed deals you'll win. Sounds like a pretty basic formula, right? So all that's to say is that if you make $5 a day, that's $25 a week. You may only set one meeting. But if your goal is 5 meetings next week, that approach won't work. So start from your goal and work backwards. So for example, if you're looking for 5 meetings and it takes 25 dials to get one of those meetings, you'll need to make 125 dials that week to attain your goal of 5. The reason it's important to know these numbers is because it's easy to get distracted or feel defeated. But if you know your numbers, how many hours does it take? How many dials does it take to get an appointment? And then work from your goal, then the defeat won't occur because you know it's just a numbers game. So with that said, there is no better cold calling than warm. There's also no better marketing than referrals, right? But how many of us have the number of referrals that come in regularly week over week? So at some point, you've got to go where your market is. You got to pitch them. But there are ways to get from point A to point B. And some of that we'll cover right now. Here's a little quote that I found. It's no different in sales. Elite salespeople, like elite athletes, track everything. So you'll never reach peak performance until you know your numbers and use those numbers to make directional corrections. Track your activity, number of dials daily, number of meetings. So how many dials need to be made in order to get the number of meetings you want weekly that will allow you to scale and grow your business? So we're going to now go to the prospect list. We're going to talk about the prospect list because strategy in prospect list is question number one, right? There are three main questions that we're asking ourselves. How do we be successful? And the first question is about strategy and your list. So strategy in cold calling has much to do with your target. Who are you going after? So there are two ways to acquire a prospect list. One, review the prospect list that you have in your CRM and Excel, depending on what you have. Even if they're a few years old, they could have valuable data in there that makes it better than a purchase list, which we'll talk about in a second. So an in-house list is a list that you've either developed somehow. It could have been from in-house leads, could have been from AdWords, could have been from conferences, email marketing. It also could have just been a list that you purchased that someone worked, that someone used and gained information on. Some companies don't have that. They have no lists, or they have a list from 10 years ago and that's all they have since. So that leads us to number two, which is a list broker or an association list. So you can purchase a list from a list broker or an association. There are a couple that I might recommend. I have no skin in that game, but nobody wants me to not tell them who I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you two. One of them is Sales Intel. The second one is Seamless AI. Those are pretty good. There's a third one, which I'm still on the fence about, called Apollo. But that's the cheapest. But again, the cheapest isn't always the best, right? And this is the challenge with prospect lists that are purchased, is that they're usually mediocre in their raw form, no matter what list you buy. I've gotten away from ZoomInfo. It doesn't mean I'll always stay away from ZoomInfo, but just for now, because they got a little big for their britches. They were charging like $25,000 for their list. And for us as small business owners or small businesses, that's a tough nut to swallow. So I think that with the first two I mentioned, Sales Intel or Seamless AI, you could do pretty well from a list standpoint. It's still going to cost you at least $300 a month, but it's a good place to get started. And you don't have to commit to more than a year. I'd like to see you commit to like 6 months if possible. They'll negotiate. Association lists, though, are my favorite list because of what you can do in the introduction, right? So, for example, if you can say we're also members of NJBIA, that goes a lot further than just a cold call with no introduction. It takes the guard down of the prospect. So whenever you have the opportunity to say, what associations do I belong to? This is a great way to capitalize on that association membership, take the guard down of the prospect that you're about to talk to. But you can't always easily acquire those lists. So certain chamber lists or, certain associations won't allow you to download those lists. But again, the warmer the list, the more reliable the names and the likely the target, the better your outcome. Okay, so what is a qualified list? So this is the second piece of importance that I want everybody to remember. A cold calling effort is only as good as your list, right? So you've got the talent behind the call, hopefully you or someone like us, and then you've got the list itself. And we want to get the list in a place that can lend itself towards the appointment. So if you have a brand new cold list that has never been touched, it's going to be a lot further to get to the mountaintop, right? It's a lot further to get the outcome you want. So again, in an effort to train your mind, because a lot of this is just mental. And if you go into cold calling thinking, I'm going to get an appointment today, you probably won't on a cold list. Why? Because you've got bad numbers, you've got names that are not accurate. You've got staff sizes. If staff size is relevant to you, that's not going to be accurate either, especially now post-pandemic, post-Great Resignation. So a qualified list is one in which the records have key information you need to conduct an initial effective call to a decision maker. So, can I do business with them? Can they do business with me? Is the prospect who I think they are? And secondly, who is the decision maker? Not who handles, who makes the decision on is the key question. So when we can acquire information from a receptionist, usually that's where the qualification call is taking place. It's to a receptionist. It's making one pass through the list. And this is some information that you're going to want to confirm. And every business is different in terms of what makes for a qualified record or list. So for some, it might be staff size. For another, it might be square footage. For another, it might be location. There's a variety of ways to consider the qualified record. But at the very least, can I do business with them? Can they do business with me? Is the prospect who I think they are? And who is the decision maker? We did a 10-month study of appointment production, which showed that those who dialed from a list that was fully qualified acquired 8.5 times the number of appointments than those dialing from a raw list. So again, expectations, right? If you expect to get tons of appointments from a cold list, you will not. That's why you got to get it in good shape. And by the way, a list that's in good shape can be used for a host of marketing techniques besides cold calling, from email newsletters and LinkedIn and even direct mail, right? There's a host of ways to use a qualified list that can nurture your prospects, even if when you can't, right? You can't touch 1,000 people every month. Well, when you qualify your list, it's going to look better and better every month that goes by, and you can use it for future marketing efforts. All right, so let's talk about lead or list qualification. How do I prospect? How do I prospect effectively through qualification? There are 2 ways to do it. One of my favorite memes, it's from the early 2000s. If anybody knows Mean Girls, good little flick there. But the phone call would be one way, right? So call to the main number to speak to a live human, usually the receptionist, and you're there to get info. You can even say, I'm looking to send them info, whether you are or not, but you probably will eventually, but you're really there to get information. And it's supposed to be very innocuous, just very casual, and you're just looking to confirm if there's an opportunity. So have your list of questions ready. So fact-finding questions to that receptionist. We talked about the decision maker name. What about email? What about their extension? Maybe that, again, the staff size is relevant. You've got to figure out what those questions are, have them figured out so that you can properly, in one call, get those answers that you need. The second way is research. I like to fill in the gaps with my research. Some people prefer to call first. That is going to be up to you. And there's an ongoing debate in my company about which should happen first, the research or the call. You can decide. I can see the advantage of both research first, call second, or call first, research second. So in the research side, you can look at the company website. You could try LinkedIn, try Google search for company news. You'll spend more time in the research mode than you will on a phone call. So that's the downside of research. But the upside of research is that you'll get more information and more data from the means that I just mentioned. Okay, now let's talk about what happens if you spend too much time on the wrong prospects. Right? This is why I always spend a few minutes on this topic about qualifying, because it literally will lend itself to success or failure. So if you're spending time on the wrong prospects, and that either means that they're not qualified or they're tire kickers, right? So people that just can't make decisions, they can't say yes to an appointment, they make an appointment, then they no-show or they ghost, right? So it's not to say that those can't be won back, but you've just got to be careful about relying on too few of prospects to carry your business forward. That's why you got to have a list that's sizable and then know how to say next when the prospect is not playing ball. Smart prospecting makes you money. Smart prospecting. So what do we mean by smart prospecting? Well, here's an example. You can break the prospects down by 3 categories, A, B, and C. So let me give you an example. A guy called me last week from a staffing firm. I've used them before. Years ago, I've used them, and I hired one person. And this guy has continued to call and email me very casually for, I don't know, about almost 2 years. And every time I say to him, I'm good, there's nothing I need. And I wondered to myself, Dan, if you spent time calling prospects that were more well qualified than Amanda, how much further would you be? How many Amandas are you calling that may hire once a year, may not from a staffing firm? So it's important to really think about, what does a good prospect mean to you? And typically, a good prospect is going to have a certain revenue dollar value that means something to your business because you're spending time or money on it. What do I mean by that? You've got your A's, your B's, and your C's, right? Rank them. Get into your CRM and rank your prospects. A's and B's will make you money. A's are the best. A's and B's will make you money. C prospects, they may or may not make you money, but it's not worth the effort of your time to go after them. What do you do instead? Automation, right? Because you can't get back your time. But Constant Contact, MailChimp, and the like, they don't know from time. So have them do the work to the C prospects. All right. Now we're going to move to the needs analysis, right? So engaging questions to get the prospects actively involved and to elicit pain points in order to find a match between their needs and your solutions. That's kind of a mouthful. So what am I really saying? Well, first off, the sale is in the questions. The sale is in the questions. Again, gone are the days where you can set up a meeting in 15 seconds and that meeting sticks. People are too cautious about their time and they're skeptical in the market. So how do we make a value play for these prospects? We do so with engaging questions. So we'll talk about that. We'll spend a couple minutes on engaging questions and what that means to elicit pain points. The second thing we're going to talk about briefly is the reason to meet, right? How do we elicit those pain points and improvements and then bring it back because of active and really solid listening skills that allows us to connect the dots of why they would meet? How? By using their words. Their words. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute, and I'll give you an example. Let's first focus on the needs analysis. The questions you ask are more important than the things you can say. That's why they talk about that 80-20 rule, right? Good salespeople do 80% of the listening, 20% of the talking. Same goes here in a cold call. The more you can ask good, thoughtful questions, not just yes, no questions, but thoughtful questions that get the prospect talking, because most people will want to talk. They're not going to want to talk for 40 minutes, but they'll talk for 5 minutes if they feel like you're an equal, and you are an equal, right? You've got something to offer that they could probably use or at least consider. So that's all we're asking them to do is give some consideration to what we have in mind for them. So again, it's about active listening. So the first piece is fact finding. So what do we mean by fact finding? Well, hopefully you can confirm what you learned during the qualifying, right? So you asked the receptionist some questions, you found some information. So for example, you're the one that makes decisions on X, Y, Z, right? That would be one question to a decision maker. I understand you're the person that makes decisions on X, Y, Z. You're requalifying. Also, I understand that your staff size is about 55. Is that accurate? Again, a fact find. And then maybe if I ran that staffing firm I was telling you about with Dan, I might ask, well, how many people do you hire for annually? If I ran a janitorial service company, I might say, how many times weekly does your office get cleaned? Real just fact finding, asking a few situational questions. So that's step one in the needs analysis is fact finding, confirming what you already know. Second, most important, the most important thing about this whole presentation is this piece right here. Uncover pain points or improvements. Now, I've had salespeople say, but Amanda, how much time do you think I have on this cold call? Like nobody wants to sit with me for 10 minutes. Wrong. They will sit with you. If you can show yourself as someone that's a thought leader and someone that's got the goods, as I like to say, they will sit with you. Now, that doesn't mean that 100% of them will, but that's okay. Gain their interest, gain their curiosity. And at the very least, if the only question you get answered is an understanding of their pain points or their improvements, you will now set yourself up for the next call because next time maybe they'll have an extra few minutes to talk to you. So what do we mean by uncover pain points or improvements? Well, first off, that's more of an emotional pull for information, right? As opposed to the fact find, situational. This one is more of an emotional questions. Emotion is what gets people to act, right? When the words come out of their mouth, they're reliving what their problems or needs might be so that you can make it better. So what you can't ask is, so tell me what keeps you up at night. Can't ask that question. No one's going to answer that. However, but when you think about improvements you'd like to see with your current service, what would that look like? Or if you could wave the wand and, make your situation just a little bit better, what one thing might that look like? Right? So, the real juice, the real win in these questions is making sure that you understand if there's a need or a challenge to solve. Because if someone says to you, I'm thrilled, I'm happy, there's nothing you can do, you know what you say then? Next. We don't need to beat the dead horse, right? Next. There's 1,000 other prospects you can call. And if they're not ready now, you can ask a different question. Okay, great. Sounds like you're good for now. What month do you think I should follow up when maybe this might be a little bit more appropriate? Get the month to call back. Very casual. And you can move on. If you cannot uncover pain points or improvements, move on, right? All right. So what are we doing here? We are asking questions to see if we can bring value to their life, because this is the one element, they can't bring back time. So there's one element where there are no redos, and that's the time that we have. So we know it's hard enough to get 2 minutes of a prospect's time, but now that you're at the point where you're ready to ask for 30 minutes of their time, you got to bring it. And you've got to show that there's a little bit of value right up front to make it worth that 30 minutes to be kept. And I think that's one thing that we've got to remember as salespeople. It's one thing to get a meeting. It's another thing to get a kept meeting, or a meeting that sticks. So you, and more so the prospect, should be super clear that there's a true reason to meet. Otherwise, they will say no to the meeting, or they will say yes, but then bail out of the meeting. So you might be wondering, well, why am I asking all these questions on the very first meeting? And the answer is twofold. One, you want to make sure they keep the meeting, which they'll do, because you ask smart questions. And two, you demonstrated yourself as a salesperson with possible solutions to their problems. Again, making it more likely that they'll keep the meeting. All right, let's talk about connecting the dots. In 1 to 2 sentences, connect the prospect's pain points with your solutions to make a clear reason to meet. All right, so what that basically means is, well, Susan, given the fact that you've been stuck with some of the administrative tasks and payroll review for the business, we can take that off your plate, as well as avoid any upcoming spike with your insurance renewal. Does it make sense to pick a day over the next week so I can show you some better options? The only reason I knew that Susan was stuck with so many administrative tasks, she's working 10 hours, trying to fit that into an 8-hour day. She also does payroll. So I'm sharing with her that I hear her. I understand her pain and her reason to meet, and I state it, but it's because she told me that. Here's another. So Joe, since you clearly have so much on your plate, while also trying to do all the hiring yourself, I'd like to show you a way to give more time back in your day with our competitive solutions that also combines technology. Can we take a look at the calendar next week? Do you have it in front of you? Again, the prospect's reason to meet. All right. So let's talk about multi-channel marketing. We're taking a big jump here because we are now getting off of the appointment setting. That could be 6 hours of education, but we only have about 25, 30 minutes. So I wanted to make sure that I was respectful of everybody's time. We're going to jump into the multi-channel, but I'm happy to answer any questions, not only after this discussion, but also separately. I will provide my contact info at the end of the meeting, and there's a pretty strong chance you guys will get my newsletter if you would like it. So here's how to use the multi-channel marketing, which I'm a fan of. So this is alongside phone prospecting. So prospecting by phone does not necessarily work in a vacuum, right? Your best chance of waking the decision maker from his cave is by going through different openings in that cave, right? So we are looking to figure out how to use an omni approach to that's affordable for the small business, that allows us to nurture and grow our top line funnel to then close more deals. So let's talk about what that looks like. This is a very packed slide, so just bear with me here. So the first, I'm going to talk about three, right? LinkedIn, voicemail, and email usage. The first one is LinkedIn, where it is an excellent research tool. It allows you to call out. There's really two purposes. I'm using this one example where you can call out to a disengaged prospect, which means that you don't need to beat your head against the wall on a prospect that you can't reach. Right now, keep in mind, it takes anywhere from 3 to 9 dials and a couple of emails to wake them out of that slumber. It's unusual to reach someone on the first or second or even third dial. And that's what makes cold calling hard, right? That's what makes it kind of grunt work, as I like to say, but the necessary part of it. It's the necessary part of the sales role. And sometimes you've just got players that aren't playing, and you've got prospects that are disengaged or not playing ball, but it also could just be that, again, everybody's trying to fit 10, 12 hours into an 8-hour day. And I think that having that empathy is what also allows it easy to go next or not take it personally. Because sometimes people ask me that, they're like, I can't do that. I can't do 6 hours of calls in a week. It's too much on me mentally. And I say, you've got to train your mind for that thick skin that allows you to say next, and it's not personal. So it's a great tool to call out a disengaged prospect. It's also a great research tool, and it's also an opportunity to invite prospects to nurture when you are doing LinkedIn campaigns. Like, for example, with Rachel, let's just say you're doing a LinkedIn content program with her, and she's producing content for you. Do you have the eyeballs? Well, this is a great way to ensure that people that may be a good prospect of yours are in that funnel to get nurtured. So between nurturing, research, it's a great tool to get ahead with your prospects. Email. So I like to have email 1, 2, and 3 as templates. They're templates, but I sprinkle them, the introduction, with 1 or 2 custom sentences. I never get off a phone call without finding out something that I can then use in my email. Or maybe I see an article that I think they'll like that I can include as a link. Especially if you're very involved in an industry, if you're involved in an industry itself, like the dental industry, there's always something going on, and you can pull an article and say, I thought of you and maybe this could be interesting. It just shows that you're interested in them, and that even though you might have 100 prospects that you want to reach out to this week, it doesn't feel like that. And everyone that you prospect wants to feel like they're the only ones you're calling that day. So a template is good, but customizing that template just a little bit for each one is important. And each one is going to be a little different. Maybe email 1 is a cold email, quick, pretty brief, right? You don't want to go too long on that. Email 2 might be some other type of, maybe you've got some kind of case studies, right? And then email 3 is some kind of follow-up with other links. But that would be used for both prospecting and for a post presentation. So after you present, you will have an opportunity to send a follow-up as well. And you want to have all these prepared. And then lastly, voicemail. How do we use voicemail? Well, it is certainly not because we're expecting a lot of callbacks, right? We already know that that is not likely. So even though I wrote, use your notes to find compelling reason for them to call you back, the first part is always true. You always want to find something compelling to put in that voicemail. But on the callback, maybe you'll get a win. At the very least, you'll gain some brand awareness. So if we can gain some brand awareness from a voicemail that is thoughtful and compelling, we might either get a callback or at least they'll take the call next time. Be careful. You don't want to overdo it. Sometimes people say to me, well, first they'll say, how many phone calls can I make to that prospect in a week? And I say 2 or 3 tops in a week, because people have caller ID. Don't want to be a stalker, right? Voicemail once a week. After 3 weeks, if you've left voicemails once a week, don't keep leaving them once a week. Once every 2 weeks, you got to start to limit it. And then again, that next, that's where that comes in. Not because you're giving up on them, but because you got to move on, because you'll make yourself crazy if you stick with the same 20 prospects that are not playing ball. So those are basically the three tenets to multi-channel when it comes to integrating the phone. So we'll talk a little bit more about that if anybody has additional questions on that, but those are the three ways that market reach both qualifies and then engages with the prospect. So there are so many marketing techniques out there, and they can all work if done properly. But most of us are small businesses on a budget, right? And you can't try it all and you can't do it all. But I'll give you 3 examples of how market reach chooses what it is that we're going to do. So we do outbound, of course. We do outbound appointment setting. We have identified target prospects in our CRM that we reach out to, and that includes 2 industry targets that we're really involved with. And then separately is our inbound leads that we're consistently nurturing and working. So those are essentially our outbound that we work. I also have a newsletter that we send out about every 45 days or so. And this ensures that any prospects that we haven't gotten to by phone still gets our logo in front of them regularly so that we can be top of mind when they're ready. I have a company that works on my SEO to ensure that I can be found by search engines. And of course, I do podcasts and webinars. So you've got to experiment, and you've got to have a pile of money somewhere because you can't do it all. If you're a solopreneur, you can certainly have a lifestyle business and do minimal, but if you're looking to scale, you can't do it all. And so you either have to have money or time, one of the two. And when I was young in my 20s and I started this business, I certainly did not have the money, but I did have the time, and I worked a lot. And there are things that I would have done differently now looking back. For example, I would have hired a salesperson much sooner. But you've got to experiment and find things that work and then continue to do them. And also make sure that you're experimenting the right way. Because sometimes people say, well, I did that, it didn't work. Yeah, but how'd you do it? Did you do it properly? And that's always the tough question. Sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. So that is it for my presentation, folks. We'll leave a few extra minutes for Q&A, and that is my email and my phone number and my website. If anybody wants to take that down, I'll be going off camera shortly so that I can take questions.
Oh, no, you're not. You're staying on camera for Q&A, Missy. You're not going anywhere just yet.
No problem. All good.
So I know we've got some questions in the Q&A, and Kelly Loro is on stage now, and she will facilitate this conversation. What I did wanted to say is the way the conversation has been about cold calling, but this technique applies to everything. I have to be honest, I don't cold call. I haven't ever, because there's always been something close to a lukewarm list of people that I would call. So I personally have not bought lists in my time. But the one thing I wanted to say is how you prospect is showing your clients how you're going to work with them when they become a customer. So all these steps have to be smart and connected, and you have to be tenacious without being annoying. So I think there's a lot here, and I have so much I could say, but Kelly, I'm going to hand it to you for Q&A.
Hi, yes, thank you. And thank you so much, Amanda. This was very both enlightening and also, it helps because I do a lot of prospecting. It does feel like a black sometimes trying to talk into, but it's nice to hear that, the X amount of times you need to do or whatever. It's nice to connect on something that could be very frustrating, and I'm sure a lot of people here can relate to that. So we've got a ton of questions. I'm going to start off with one which I know has always been top of mind, especially the last year or two. So we'll just get right into it. So, Amanda, how do you see AI aiding or streamlining this the prospecting process?
Well, I would like to believe it streamlines, right? So, it's coming after us either way. We can't run from it. It's coming. It's just a matter of how do we use it and how do we stay ahead of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we stay ahead so it's not chasing us, so that we're chasing it, and that we can find the right tools that will support us. And it's still in its infancy. And I think that I speak for many of you, especially as business owners, when we've got so much on our plate. it takes like another person to actually investigate the 20 AI tools that are at our disposal. And that's part of the experimenting, right? Like you can't delve into 20. That's like another full-time job, but you also can't ignore it. And so there's a couple ways that I think AI will help salespeople. One, there are some podcasts and some webinars that are dedicated to that. I think that I heard Rachel say that you guys are going to be talking about that as well. It's at a later date. But there's a couple ways. Number one, we have actually used ChatGPT for list development, which is interesting. Internet research for lists is very manual, right? So if you want a list, it's too manual. It's not worth it versus buying a list if you have literally nothing else. But ChatGPT allows you to dive a little deeper. For example, we had a client that said, I want a list only of franchise restaurants in Houston that own at least 10 franchisees. It was very specific. And there are some list brokers out there, but they're pretty expensive and you don't really know the quality of those lists. So if you just want one specific list and you want 50 of those, you can use ChatGPT and it'll tell you. You still have to access phone numbers and things like that. But that's one example of how we used it with ChatGPT is for list development. The second thing that I see useful for AI, and I have a new client that actually does this, which is list qualification. So there are tools out there in AI that help you scrape, for example, a LinkedIn profile, condense it into a couple hundred words, and then allow you to utilize that so that you're not, again, spending all that time researching the prospect, but instead can just read something that will take you under 90 seconds. So that is an example of how I think AI can help us, a salesperson, to qualify records.
So
Yeah.
let me piggyback on that. So if you are on this webinar, I'm going to assume, which I never do, that you're using a CRM. I highly recommend it. I don't think you can build a business without a CRM. That's my opinion. We can help you implement that. We happen to be Zoho people. I have been doing the part-time job of trying to figure out how Zia, Zoho's AI tool, works within Zoho. And what I can tell you is I'm seeing big things and little things. There's a button on my Zoho now that says enhance data. And when I click that button, it goes out to the internet. And based on the domain, it's telling me how big the company is, what their motto is, how many people they have, and that's getting mapped back to my data. So AI, I think right now, even though time is so finite, I think it's a really good use of our time to devote an hour a week to finding the YouTube channel, the podcast, the something that helps you to understand how you can use AI in your role. Of course, it's for content generation as well. But what I'm finding about Zoho Zia is if I make my calls and send my emails through Zoho, which I don't always do and I'm going to start doing, it can identify trends. It can tell me, it can draft the next email. It can tell me lots of different information. So I'm plugging CRM because you really need it. And with AI, you need it even more than you used to.
Yeah. And I like what Amanda had to say too about keeping it always to the personal, is that you're using it as a tool to aggregate all this information for you as the salesperson to use, because that's the connection that makes it happen. It's that personal connection. So that's great information. The next question we have is from one of our attendees, Chuck Rose, who is the founder and wealth manager at Granite Rose Wealth Alliance. And the question is, what is the key to prospecting business owners and other successful people who don't check their own email or voicemail?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know if that's frequent anymore, right? I think that in the 90s and the 2000s, there was tons of everybody, every CEO had an assistant that worked direct, or even a vice president that had an assistant. I don't know if that's as prevalent anymore. That does still occur, especially in certain industries like financial services. But that would mean that you want to gain an ally from the executive assistant. That would be the first thing I would do, right? So number one is I would treat the executive assistant like the decision maker, to where you know that that person controls the decision maker's calendar, and I would work through that person. And if it means that you have to get content in front of the executive assistant to then see if the decision maker will kind of allow you into their calendar, then that's the same idea, right? But a good executive assistant is usually pretty nice, actually, and pretty helpful. again, there's always a difference between a receptionist who is there to block you out versus an executive assistant who's there to literally
info.
assist the decision maker, but they're still there to ensure that the time is spent well. So
Great advice.
I would do
I
it.
like that a lot. So really, the executive assistant is your first decision maker.
Yep. Exactly.
Absolutely. And as someone who's been on both sides, it really does wonders when you're nice right out of
True.
the gate. I certainly agree with that, and I think that people will go out of their way to help you when you are kind. And it's such a simple concept, but very lost on a lot of people.
Yes.
You wouldn't expect. But yes, thank you so much. So this is something you had spoken about, but we already had about 2 or 3 different people ask it again. So I'm going to propose it. And let me do it from the person who initially. So Adam Butler from an inside sales rep from Veolia, North America, and a few other anonymous questions was, out of say 100 cold calls, what is the average percentage of contact answering? So how many, especially in this day and age with so many different outlets and some people not using the phone as they used to, what would be the, like, I guess the idea, the percentage of what kind of numbers of
Yeah.
meetings you should be getting?
That's actually a great question, Adam. And I think that the answer partly relies on who the target is. What do I mean? Well, if you're calling enterprise, right? If you're trying to reach the VP of Nike, I mean, man, you've got to use multi-channel to reach the VP of Nike. He is probably not going to pick up the phone on the first or second dial. But if you're calling a bagel store owner, you're going to reach them a ton, right? So it really depends on your target. But if you want, again, because I like to present expectations to allay the defeat, because that's the biggest part of this game. It's just to keep going and to know that someone's going to pick up and someone's going to say yes. And when they do, now you're that much closer to a sale. So if I were to answer that and not be super evasive, which I just was, then here's the numbers that you would kind of go by for the average company with maybe talking to or trying to reach an HR director, as an example. Typically, I expect our people to make anywhere from 13 to 17 dials per hour, 13 to 17 dials per hour. And from that, they will reach anywhere from 1 to 3 people per hour. 1 to 3. Now, does that mean that some hours they reach 0? Yes. Sometimes they reach 4. So it's not an exact science, but again, it depends on who their target is, how well their list is curated, are the phone number, are there direct dials, right? So there's so many factors that go into it, but that's a good benchmark to at least have in your mind. Thanks for the question, Adam.
It is a great question. And what I want to say is, if you have CRM, all of this is being tracked in your CRM, because ultimately what this is about is figuring out what dials you can turn up to improve your bottom line results. So if the average is, you make 13 to 17 dials per hour and you get 1 to 3 people, that might be different for you. But if you are tracking this information, if you start with a behavior cookbook of here's what I'm going to do, then you have data that you can manipulate to improve your results. I think that's where AI is really going to come in a big way.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, data is king. And for the companies that have not yet developed any data, you've got to start. One of the reasons Donna expressed earlier on that she doesn't really have to cold call is because she has done such a great job marketing to the public, her public, right? Not just the general, her public of potential prospects and nurturing it to where it's all lukewarm.
Right.
And that's really a key way to get better results.
Right. And, I don't even know if Rachel's still here, but the truth is all the marketing that we do is to build our list. That's the audience that we own. That's the audience that we can nurture. That's the audience that when we send an email through Constant Contact or whatever tool we're using, I can look at who clicked and who opened. And if I want, I can make phone calls to the people who clicked on it. And I can say, hey, Jane, your name came across my desk. I've been thinking about you. I'm not going to tell them they clicked on their email,
Right.
but it's a warm lead. So if you are doing email marketing, the other thing I would say is block time for a day or two after the email to look at the clicks and make some phone calls. It's super powerful.
Mm-hmm. And that's where automation comes in too with the CRM, because if someone clicks, sometimes you can just have a task automatically
It will create
set.
a task, right?
Mm-hmm. and then you know who to call, which I think is again back to the time, money or time. You got to balance both. Another great question I think would be, because you have a short amount of time, especially on the first couple of calls that you're making, how do you balance the personalization with efficiency when you're prospecting at scale? So, you know, how do
Good
you,
question.
yeah, how do you balance the personalization with that efficiency?
Yeah, so the first thing you're doing is making sure your list is solid by target, by persona, by demographic. So earlier I talked about how this guy Dan was calling me. I'm really not a good prospect for him. My revenue opportunity for him is too low for him to spend time with me. Inefficient use of his time. Therefore, I would like to see Dan step it up, right? So I want to see him, if he's a staffing firm, I want him to call on companies that have a reason to hire 4 temps a year, because 4 temps a year might be 20,000 in revenue, or at least revenue, not profit, but revenue. So if Dan is focusing on that environment, every call he makes is going to be efficient. All the companies he calls are real prospects to him, and his time is going to be more well spent. But he's got to get there. He's got to get that list in better shape. And the only way he'll be able to do that is through calling and research. That's the one thing that AI has not caught up with yet, is that it might be able to identify 4 people that you can call, but you don't know which of those 4 is actually going to pull triggers. So that's why you still got to make the call and figure stuff out.
Donna, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, the other thing I do want to add, and it's kind of related, but I think it's really important. You know, we're talking about, you know, following up and how much do you call, and, you know, what's annoying and what's not annoying. And again, I think these are things that, you know, are sometimes related to your industry, maybe are just your personal preferences, your comfort level. But once I've engaged with a client, at the end of each call, I will say, what do you, or a prospect, client or prospect, what do you want to have happen next? Do you want me to follow up with you, or would you prefer that I leave it with you? That little technique right there has been a huge time saver for me, because you got to give people the opportunity to say no, because they're always going to say yes, because they don't want to disappoint you. They don't want to lie to you. It's just how the process goes. So for me, I limit how many times I'm going to call by asking them, do they want me to call them?
I love that. Yeah, you're basically giving the prospect an out, and that's really powerful.
I want them to take it.
Yeah,
I got a list of 10,000 people I can call.
there you go.
Feel free to say no.
Love it. See, Donna's developed the thick skin that we need. See that? That's good.
Well, you know, that is the other thing I was going to say. This is a muscle. This is a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it.
Agreed.
Absolutely. I'm still building mine. So it's nice to hear, you know, the process and all that. So we're almost at time. Do we have time for one more, or do you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. And if we didn't get to your question, we will get to them afterwards. We still have a lot of questions in Q&A, and I know we had a lot from the registration, but Amanda and I will work to get you all answers, and you will get follow-up from us so you know how to reach us as well.
So this one's just sort of more of a general, and probably can help a lot of people struggling, but how do you stay motivated when you're not seeing responses after multiple attempts?
Yeah. Well, you know, we've talked endlessly about the thick skin and the you know, you see me go like this, right? Because that means like I'm just brushing it off and I go next. And I can't put a little post-it note on your screen that says next. It's a very powerful word that allows you to say, you know what? This isn't make or break. Nothing here's crisis. If they say no, great. I'm on my way to my next yes. And you know, the frustrating part about cold calling, believe it or not, is actually not the no's, it's the silence. It's the not getting a response. It's the fact that I just told you you can make 15 dials and only talk to one person. That's a level of frustration too. You got to build the stamina. You've got to build the stamina and know what your goal is. And if you know that a $20,000 sale could be right around the corner because of your next cold call that you make into a sale, that's powerful. You still do all the other things, right? You still do all the other marketing things, but this is a way to proactively get to your audience. Whether it's a cold call or a warm call, it's proactive. And that's what we want to see you guys embrace.
Awesome. And look at that. right at time. So Amanda, thank you for sharing your wisdom and insight and energy with us. I hope all of you take away one or two things that you are going to put into play, because knowledge is not power, applied knowledge is power. And so I thank you all. You will get an email follow-up. This is recorded. Amanda, we did have people ask for your slides, if we could include those, if that's okay with you in the follow-up.
Sure.
And until next time in June, when I believe, Kelly, what are we talking about? Automation? And you'll hear lots more about AI. So thank you all. Have a great day, and we hope to see you next month. Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much, everybody. Take care.
Bye, Amanda. Take
Bye-bye.
care.